Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in NewsHour, US rejects Tahawur Rana's plea to stay his extradition as India collaborates with the United States to complete formalities. Kremlin warns of potential action against EU militarization plans, labels EU rhetoric as confrontational. US President Donald Trump criticizes the US-Japan Security Treaty as non-reciprocal. And India urges the UK to take strict action over EAM Jaishankar's security breach in London. The US President Donald Trump criticized the 1960 US-Japan Security Treaty as one-sided. Japan responded, highlighting the treaty's joint protection provisions and expanded mutual protection from the 2015 legislation. And Trump didn't voice these complaints publicly during last month's summit when, Prime Minister Ishiba was in Washington. This report puts President Trump's comments into context since that February US-Japan summit.
On February 7, President Donald Trump announced Japan's commitment to double its defense spending by 2027 and approved nearly $1 billion in foreign military sales to Tokyo. The Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba had met Trump in Washington to discuss Japanese companies' investments and job creation in the United States.
And I'm pleased to say that this week my administration approved nearly $1 billion in foreign military sales to Tokyo. The United States is totally committed to the security of Japan. We will extend the full strength of American deterrence capabilities in defense of our friend and ally.
Then Trump went further. On Wednesday, March 5, he told the US Congress that Japan and South Korea wanted to partner with the US in the Alaska pipeline.
My administration is also working on a gigantic natural gas pipeline in Alaska, among the largest in the world, where Japan, South Korea, and other nations want to be our partner with investments of trillions of dollars each.
While Trump made these announcements, Japanese Trade Minister Yoji Mutu, set to visit the United States from March 9 to 11, said the pipeline needed study. Muto hopes to gain exemptions on proposed tariffs for key Japanese exports like cars and steel. President Trump now says Japan isn't required to protect the US militarily and benefits economically, suggesting he's changed his position on US military support to Japan or made it conditional. On Wednesday, Italian President Sergio Mattarella met Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba in Tokyo. Ishiba assured Mattarella that Japan is committed to working with Europe to end the Ukraine-Russia war.
Japan and Italy are strategic partners who share values and principles. As Euro-Atlantic and Indo-Pacific security become increasingly indivisible, close cooperation between Japan and Italy is more important than ever.
President Trump reiterated on Thursday that NATO countries must pay for their own defense, as they aren't paying enough.
I view NATO as potentially good, but you gotta get some good thinking in NATO. It's very unfair what's been happening. Until I came along, we were paying close to 100% of NATO. So think of it, we're paying 100% of their military, and they're screwing us on trade.
EU leaders and Ukrainian President Zelensky met in Brussels on Thursday amid fears of a Russian attack on an EU country and doubts about US support.
Today, it is obvious that the White House questioned the unity of the entire Western world. Not only that, we see that Washington is already trying to shift the security of Europe's defense to its own forces without the United States. Such actions probably mean that NATO may cease to exist in the near future.
As the US withdraws or renegotiates its security obligations, the world grapples with the disruptive influence of the new US administration. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, European leaders convened to mobilize 800 billion euros for defense and self-reliance. Ukraine received $1 billion from Britain. This is secured by frozen Russian assets. And Ukraine also received French Mirage 2000 jets and the US-made F-16 fighters from the Netherlands. Details and context in this report.
As Ukraine scrambles to repair its tattered relationship with Washington, US and Ukraine are set to meet in Saudi Arabia's Jeddah next week over a peace agreement framework to end the conflict with Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed on Thursday that he would travel to Saudi Arabia, where he will also meet the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ahead of talks with the US officials. Ukrainian President Zelensky will also travel to South Africa, where he will hold talks with President Cyril Ramaphosa. As concerns have risen after Washington's decision to pause its aid to Ukraine, leaders throughout Europe met on Thursday in a special summit in which they sought to mobilize 800 billion euros to fund their defense and self-reliance. However, Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban has opposed the bloc's current strategy, saying that it would ruin Europe. Leaders of 26 European Union countries signed a statement voicing support for Ukraine without Hungary. The European Council chief Antonio Costa said that the EU is moving decisively towards strengthening Europe's defense after the bloc's leaders endorsed proposals to massively ramp up military investments.
Today marks a defining moment for Europe, for security of Europeans. A month ago, we had a strategic brainstorming to guide our common action on defense. And today, we are delivering, and we are moving decisively towards a strong and more sovereign Europe of defense.
Meanwhile, the Kremlin said that Russia may need to act to respond to what it called European Union's plans to militarize the bloc that cast Russia as its main adversary. Amidst criticisms from Russia, the Ukrainian Prime Minister said on Friday that it has received a first tranche of funds worth about $1 billion from Britain, secured by the proceeds of frozen Russian assets. Ukraine had also received a first batch of French Mirage 2000 fighter jets, as well as US-made F-16 fighters from the Netherlands on Thursday. But decades of dependence on US patronage, differences over financing, and disagreements over how France's nuclear deterrent can be used for Europe show how difficult it will be for the EU to fill the void left by Washington after it halted military aid to Ukraine. Bureau Report, DD India.
And Ukraine's military, for the first time, has used Mirage 2000 jets provided by France to repel a Russian attack. Russian forces launched 67 missiles and 194 drones against Ukraine, mostly on energy and civilian infrastructure in the country's Odessa, Poltava, Kharkiv and Ternopil regions. And Russia's air attack was repelled by anti-aircraft missile units, electronic warfare units and mobile fire groups of the Ukrainian Air Force and Defense Forces of Ukraine. Meanwhile, the US President has posted on his Truth Social account, and I quote, "Based on the fact that Russia is absolutely pounding Ukraine on the battlefield right now, I am strongly considering large-scale banking sanctions and tariffs on Russia until a ceasefire and final settlement agreement on peace is reached. To Russia and Ukraine, get to the table right now before it is too late. Thank you," unquote. Well, the US President Donald Trump has temporarily also delayed tariffs on some of the imports from Canada and Mexico, offering a short-term reprieve before steeper duties come into effect on April 2. It's the second time in 2 days, in fact, that Trump has rolled back his taxes from the US's two biggest trade partners. Despite this, the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, says that he's going to continue with his trade war with the United States.
US President Donald Trump suspended 25% tariffs from the Mexican and Canadian goods that are covered by the US-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. This move offered a major reprieve to the United States' two largest trading partners. The tariffs were initially supposed to come into force on February 4th, but Trump had postponed them by a month following negotiations with Mexico President Sheinbaum and Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau. Following the decision, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum thanked President Trump for the move.
Bueno, está traducido. A ver, ponlo en inglés y luego.
This agreement is valid until April 2nd. Remember that he announced that on April 2nd he is going to announce tariffs to all the countries in the world. So he places Mexico within that international agreement, or the decision he is going to make more than agreement, because it is their decision, but he puts us within. Just like any other country in the world, not with what he was doing now, that finally excluded us.
But despite Trump's reprieve, Canadian PM Trudeau said that he will continue his trade war with the US for the foreseeable future.
I can confirm that we will continue to be in a trade war that was launched by the United States for the foreseeable future. So Canadians should continue to buy Canadian, continue to stand up for each other. But we are trying to reduce the areas and the impact that these tariffs that the Americans are bringing in will have on Canadian workers.
Trump's pause applies to 38% of Canada's exports to the US. Following the Trump's tariff suspension, Canada also delayed retaliatory tariffs on $125 billion of American goods. President Trump granted temporary tariff exemptions for Canadian and Mexican goods covered by the North American Trade Agreement until April 2nd. According to the White House, Trump's tariffs will still apply to 50% of Mexican imports and more than 60% Canadian goods. Trump is poised to enact reciprocal tariffs after April 2nd on foreign nations that have import taxes on US goods. Amid the escalating tariff pressure from US, China's imports unexpectedly shrank over the January to February period and exports lost momentum. Chinese Foreign Minister warned that it will resolutely counter US pressure on tariffs and added that major powers should not bully the weak. US levied an additional 10% tariff on Chinese imports over the continued flow of the deadly opioid fentanyl into the country. With Bureau Inputs, Aman Kumar Himanshu's report for DD India.
Well, the US President Donald Trump has said that he's written to Iran, urging them for talks to prevent nuclear weapon development, or they're going to be risking military action. Trump warned that intervention would be terrible for Iran. A landmark 2015 deal known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action collapsed after Trump withdrew the United States in 2018, and he has since reinstated strict sanctions. While Tehran denies seeking nuclear weapons and has shown willingness to revive the accord, negotiations have stalled. Last month, the UN Atomic Energy Agency chief, Rafael Grossi, had warned that Iran's uranium enrichment was nearing weapons-grade levels. Meanwhile, a high-level Hamas delegation arrived in Cairo in Egypt. They are advancing efforts on a fragile ceasefire in Gaza. The delegation will meet with Egyptian officials on Saturday to discuss the latest developments. Hamas said they will assess the progress in implementing the ceasefire agreement and address matters related to second phase of ceasefire deal. During talks with Egyptian mediators, the Hamas delegation will also demand to open the border crossings to allow humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. Greece's parliament will vote today on a no-confidence motion against the Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis. His government over its handling of the 2023 train crash that killed 57 people. Students have gathered there outside, students and protesters outside Greece's parliament. They did so on Friday as lawmakers prepared to vote on a no-confidence motion despite growing public outrage. Mitsotakis' ruling party, it holds a majority. It's expected to survive this vote. The disaster occurred on February 28, 2023, when a passenger train collided with a freight train due to a faulty equipment and also a human error. And allegations of a government cover-up have fueled protests, and also opposition leader Nikos Androulakis has been calling for the government to respond. He's called it criminal incompetence. Gunmen killed at least 24 men in an Alawite town in Syria's coastal region, activists and a war monitor reported on Friday. The attack comes as security forces battle an insurgency by fighters from the former President Bashar al-Assad's Alawite sect. The Syrian government, led by the interim president Ahmed al-Shahara, has not released a death toll, but the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights estimates over 120 people have died. Meanwhile, pro-Turkish Syrian National Army fighters from northern Syria, they are heading to Latakia to support the authorities in quelling Assad loyalists. The violence posed a major challenge to the new administration, which is also struggling with US sanctions and security threats in the southwest. Still to come here on DD India NewsHour. EM Jaishankar meets his Irish counterpart Simon Harris in Dublin. Prime Minister Modi inaugurates the Nammo Hospital Phase 1 in Silvassa. And Prime Minister Modi to visit Mauritius on March 11 and 12.
There are people across the country and among industry sectors who are trying to make things better, rethinking the way we live.
We analyzed that if all of construction industry can start using recycled plastic sheets for just shuttering as an application, roughly 25 to 30% of all the non-recyclable plastics that you and I generate can get prevented from entering the atmosphere.
We must take responsibility as citizens to conserve these forests and protect them. They represent the cultural heritage of our ancestors.
That's a barrier made from larch, intended to dam water and help restore the wetland.
We use natural dyes for the garments. We extract the dye the way our ancestors did by using natural products with some modifications.
You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Mark Lynn. The 26/11 Mumbai terror attack accused Tahawur Rana has received a major setback from the United States Supreme Court. His petition to stop his extradition to India has been rejected, but within hours he submitted a renewed application seeking a stay on his extradition to India. The 2008 Mumbai blasts were a series of coordinated terrorist attacks that took place on November 26 in 2008. 10 members of the Lashkar-e-Taiba, a Pakistan-based terrorist organization, had carried out shooting and bombing attacks lasting for 4 days. 175 people died, 300 people were injured. Tahawur Rana is a known associate of the Pakistani-American terrorist David Coleman Headley, one of the main conspirators of the Mumbai 26, the November 26 attacks in Mumbai in 2008. Tahawur Rana had filed a petition in the US Supreme Court asking for an emergency stay on his extradition, but it was denied on Friday. In his application, Rana argued that he would not survive long enough to be tried in India due to various reasons. In addition to these concerns, Rana highlighted that he has deteriorating health. Earlier in February, the US President Donald Trump had announced the extradition of Tahawur Rana to India and said that he would face justice. He made the announcement during a joint press conference with the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, following their bilateral meeting. And on the extradition of Tahawur Rana, the Ministry of External Affairs of India has said that the government is working closely with the US government to complete the necessary formalities to allow for this extradition to take place.
You would have seen President Trump's comments regarding the extradition of Tahawur Rana. The joint statement which was adopted during the visit of the Prime Minister also reflects this sentiment. We are working closely with the US government to complete the necessary formalities to allow for his extradition to India.
And for an update and context to the story, we are joined by DD India correspondent Amrit Pal Singh, who is joining us from New Delhi. Amrit, now Rana is a Canadian citizen, so does that change anything?
Mark, no, it doesn't, because he's also an American permanent resident. So he holds a legal status in the United States. And when he was investigated for this crime and this by the FBI, and the Indian investigators raised this issue with the FBI, he was on US soil. So his being a Canadian citizen does not come in the way of his extradition to India, Mark.
Also, what formalities need to be completed for the extradition, and when can we expect them to be completed?
Mark, anytime. All formalities are complete. If you remember, when President Trump and Prime Minister Modi had held a joint press conference in the White House, President Trump had made it very clear that he wishes to extradite Tahabur Rana to India very soon. We learned that the State Department formalities are through. He's just trying, like any other accused, trying all tricks in the book to try and stall his extradition. But that also, it's only a matter of time, and a very, very short time. Because he's lost the case at multiple levels, multiple judicial levels. First at the district courts, then at the Federal Court of Appeals, then at the Supreme Court. Now he's bringing up these technical grounds. For example, the one that he brought up yesterday, which the judge, the U.S. Supreme Court judge, dismissed, citing a UK judgment saying that another arms dealer was not extradited, saying that he could be tortured in India. So he was trying to bring up that case. Now he's filed a renewed application in the court of the US Chief Justice. But unless he takes some dramatically different grounds and produces any kind of solid evidence, that's enough for the US Chief Justice to give him emergency stay, saying the circumstances have changed. Otherwise, on the merits of the case, it's over. So the judicial proceedings are almost over. He can only use them as delaying tactics. It's just a matter of procedure and working out between the Indian government and the US State Department that when Tahabur Hussain Rana could be extradited back to India. Mark.
Okay, we leave it there. Thank you very much, Amrit Pal Singh, for joining us with those updates. Our next story, India has conveyed its deep concern to the United Kingdom authorities regarding the security breach by UK-based separatist and extremist elements during the recent visit of the External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, to that country. In the weekly press conference, the Ministry of External Affairs' spokesperson, Ranveer Jaiswal, said there is a larger context to the incident.
We have conveyed a deep concern to the UK authorities about the breach of security arrangements by UK-based separatist and extremist elements during External Affairs Minister's visit. There is a larger context to the incident, and it's important to understand that. It brings out both the license accorded to such forces as well as indifference to their intimidation, threats and other actions aimed at impeding our legitimate diplomatic activities in the UK.
Well, on US tariffs, the spokesperson said that during the Prime Minister's visit to the United States in February, both sides agreed on negotiations on a multi-sector trade agreement. And he said that India and the United States, they are in the process of advancing discussions on this agreement. Also, the spokesperson informed that India's Prime Minister will be visiting Mauritius on the 11th of March and the 12th of March, where he will also attend the Mauritius National Day.
This is in regard to the visit of Prime Minister to Mauritius. On the invitation of the Prime Minister of Mauritius, Dr. Navin Chandra Ramgoolam, Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi will pay a state visit to Mauritius on March 11th and 12th. 2025 to attend the National Day celebrations of Mauritius, which falls on 12th of March. As the chief guest, a contingent of Indian Defence Forces will participate in the celebrations along with a ship from the Indian Navy.
India's External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar has concluded his visit to Ireland. In the morning, the EAM had a warm and open meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Ireland, Simon Harris, in Dublin. Both leaders discussed bilateral cooperation, including a new action plan to reinvigorate ties. They agreed to set up a joint economic commission to increase trade, investment and technological linkages. They also exchanged views on the recent developments in the respective regions and also globally, including the Ukraine conflict, West Asia, Afghanistan and the Indo-Pacific. They also spoke about India-EU cooperation and multilateralism. India's External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar, in a social media post on X, has shared photos of his interaction with the Indian community in Ireland. Jai Shankar posted on X, and I quote him now, "Great to meet our vibrant Indian community, this time in Dublin, shared with them the high appreciation the Irish leadership had for their contributions, also spoke about the transformation underway in India, our greater responsibilities abroad, and the can-do spirit of Indian youth." Interacting with the Indian community in Dublin, in Ireland, the External Affairs Minister said that when talking about India and Indians, people don't need a map. They remember from their past interactions and experience what India and Indians are.
I always tell others that when we speak of the image of India, others they don't look at a map to have an image of India. They remember a person. They remember somebody they know, some experience with them, a face, a relationship, a feeling. And while I have experienced this across the world, I must tell you, I felt it very, very strongly.
The External Affairs Minister also said that during his meetings with dignitaries in Ireland, he felt proud when they initiated talks about the Indian community.
In all the meetings, for me it was a great, I would say, sense of pride. They brought up the Indian community. They mentioned the contribution of the Indian community. Exactly what the ambassador said, that the professionals out here, the people who have contributed to the, not just development, but especially the health sector in this country. So I want to really sincerely give a very big thank you on behalf of the nation, because you make my job and my life easier.
Earlier, the External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar paid tribute to Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore at St. Stephen's Green Park in Dublin. Our next story, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has inaugurated development works worth about 2,580 crore rupees, or about 25,800 million rupees, in Silvassa, the capital of the Union Territory of Dadra and Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu. It's located on the west coast of India. In his address, the Prime Minister highlighted the region's progress as well as he launched key welfare initiatives. He urged citizens to adopt a healthier lifestyle as well. Meghna Dev reports.
Boosting healthcare facilities, PM Modi inaugurated the Phase 1 of Namo Hospital in Silvassa. PM Modi said that the 450-bedded hospital, built at the cost of over 460 crore, will significantly strengthen healthcare services in the Union Territory. PM Modi highlighted that the state-of-the-art medical care will specially benefit the tribal communities.
बीते वर्षों में इस क्षेत्र में आधुनिक स्वास्थ्य सेवाओं का काफी विस्तार हुआ है। 2023 में मुझे यहां नमो मेडिकल कॉलेज के उद्घाटन का अवसर मिला था। अब इसके साथ 450 बेड की क्षमता वाला एक और अस्पताल जुड़ गया है। इसका भी यहां उद्घाटन किया गया है। आज यहां स्वास्थ्य से जुड़ी कई दूसरी परियोजनाओं का शिलान्यास भी हुआ है। सिलवासा की इन स्वास्थ्य सुविधाओं से यहाँ के आदिवासी समुदाय को बहुत बड़ा फायदा होगा.
We are so lucky to be here that we'll be able to do our internships also here as well, because for internships and everything we need to go outside, and also our further studies would hinder somehow, because staying here in our comfort zone, also getting so much knowledge and privilege to study in such a good hospital today. We are so thankful to Shri Narendra Modi ji for opening such a great college and hospital for us and providing us all the education facilities.
PM Modi launched and laid foundation stone of multiple development projects in Silvassa, Daman and Diu, including various village roads and other road infrastructure, schools, health and wellness centers, panchayat and administrative buildings, Anganwadi centers, water supply and sewage infrastructure. Prime Minister Modi highlighted that the aim is to bring overall and holistic development in the entire union territory.
इसी विकास अभियान के तहत आज यहां 2,500 करोड़ रुपए से ज्यादा की अनेक परियोजनाओं का शिलान्यास और लोकार्पण किया गया है. इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, कनेक्टिविटी, हेल्थ केयर, एजुकेशन और टूरिज्म, यानी एक प्रकार से हर क्षेत्र से जुड़े ढेर सारे प्रोजेक्ट इस क्षेत्र के विकास को और गति देंगे. यहां नए अवसर पैदा होंगे.
Prime Minister also distributed appointment letters under Rozgar Mela and benefits to the beneficiaries under PM Awas Yojana Urban, Gir Adarsh Ajivika Yojana and Silvan Didi scheme. Meghna Dev's report for DD India.
Still to come here on DD India NewsHour. We'll get expert opinion on the changing security environment in Europe as well as around Japan. Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India. You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Mark Lynn, and Ambassador Mohan Kumar, former senior diplomat, is with us. We'll discuss with him the changing security environment in Europe and around Japan as well. Ambassador Mohan Kumar, how firm or fragile, are U.S. Security guarantees for Europe and Japan?
No, I think these were rock solid until a few weeks ago. One has to admit that. I mean, they've stood the test of time for 70, 80 years post-World War II. So we have a new president in the United States, and he was expected to bring some radical changes. But I have to confess to you, Mark, that I had no idea that he would bring such a wrecking ball to the transatlantic relationship and to the alliance system. Because when you speak of European Union, you speak of Japan, you're not talking about an ordinary relationship. These are formal allies of the United States. As you know, in the alliance system, attack against one party is considered attack against everybody. So US is in many ways legally duty bound, in many ways, to protect both Europe and Japan. So to pull out of such a security umbrella, if you like, from Europe and now calling into question the relationship with Japan, is an extraordinary act from a sitting US president. For the sitting US president to say that the European Union was established to screw us, quote unquote, is also extraordinary. So we are looking at an extraordinary president who's taking extraordinary actions. That's what I would have to tell you, frankly.
Indeed, Mr. Mohan Kumar, he seems to seek reciprocity or, something back in return, either economic or trade or something. But to what extent can the US expect this kind of reciprocity in a defense treaty? These countries have already allowed the US access to their military bases, giving the US, in fact, strategic depth.
I think what he is aiming to do, Mark, is to make these countries spend much more on defense. He has this idea, particularly with regard to Europe, that without America's undertaking the security situation in Europe or underwriting the security of Europe, Europe could never have this kind of a welfare state where people can retire at 60, take vacations of 2 months every year, and education is free, healthcare is free. So he is interpreting all this as the result of Europe taking America for a ride and America spending money on defense, which then allows these countries to spend money on other things. He is arguing that you are rich countries, so why don't you spend on your defense? I mean, you would have to say at one level that he is not wrong, because even the Maastricht Treaty of the European Union talked of common security and foreign policy and talked of European defense. So this is something the Europeans have ignored for a long time, and I'm afraid the chickens are coming home to roost. That's the way I see it. Yes, what he is doing is unfair because Europe faces an existential crisis just now, and Japan too in many ways. But we will have to wait and see how this conflict is brought to an end by Trump.
Dr. Mohan Kumar, what do you make of Europe rallying around Ukraine, and will they be able to provide enough funds to balance what the US has taken out, in a sense, or the drying up US funds?
So I worry less about the monetary aspect, frankly, because the Europeans have, of course, decided yesterday, and I don't know how much of a virtue signaling that is, but they have decided $800 billion. Yes. Of course, it remains to be seen how the member states will cough up that money. But if push comes to shove, please bear in mind that $200 billion of Russian assets is frozen in Europe. They've just confiscated it. And they could well decide at some point that, listen, we are going to take money from there. It would be against international law, I have to say. But then in war, nobody cares about these niceties. And certainly Mr. Trump is not going to care about this. So they may very well find the money. The more difficult problem is long-range missiles, American intelligence, logistics support of Americans. After all, America has almost 80,000 American soldiers in various NATO bases. Those are the kind of issues which cannot be done quickly. The Europeans will take time to do these things. So that worries me. It's not the money so much, because at the end of the day, the US contributes 16% of the NATO budget. So does Germany. So in that sense, it's not much. But it is the significant advantage that America brings to things like air power, intelligence, and logistics, which is referred to by the Europeans as American backstop. And that is why they keep asking for an American security guarantee for Ukraine, which President Trump seems extremely disinclined to give.
Now, the UK has already given $1 billion of those frozen funds as of today, and Ukraine says that they've received that money. Also, Mirage 2000 fighter jets have been given by France, and they've been used as well today in in repelling an attack. While Russia continues to pound Ukraine, Donald Trump has come out and said that he's strongly thinking of banking sanctions and tariffs on Russia until they reach a settlement and a ceasefire. So do you see this as a change, from Trump to some extent after these latest developments?
Yes, you are right. I think the Europeans will be slightly relieved that to see him put some pressure on Russia as well, because hitherto he has only put pressure on Ukraine and the Europeans. He has let Russia off the hook. But I think it is for the first time in several weeks that Trump has directly addressed the Russians and is telling the Russians that, listen, if you do not come to the negotiating table, I am going to impose further tariffs, banking sanctions, and the rest of it. So this is, I think, a first attempt by Trump to be somewhat impartial as a mediator with regard to both Russia and Ukraine.
And coming to Japan, what message is Japan sending out to the United States? They don't seem to be committed to that Alaska pipeline that the U.S. President talked about in his address to the U.S. Congress. And they are firmly supporting Europe's efforts against Ukraine.
Japan has held right from the beginning of the conflict in Ukraine that if Ukraine can suffer this fate, Taiwan can suffer this fate. So Japan has steadfastly supported Ukraine against Russia by saying that if it can happen in Europe, it can happen in Indo-Pacific. In fact, I remember having a conversation with a Japanese negotiator who expressed mild unhappiness with even the Indian position, because his feeling was that, listen, India should condemn Russia because if it can happen in Europe today, it can happen in the Indo-Pacific tomorrow. The other thing that is going to happen, Mark, as a result of all this, is that countries are going to seek nuclear weapons. And I frankly foresee an era of nuclear proliferation, especially countries like Japan, which traditionally have been extremely opposed to nuclear weapons, may change their mind, having seen the way United States has stopped supporting Europe. They may very well decide that they need the ultimate deterrence of the nuclear warheads or nuclear weapons. So in Asia, Japan and South Korea will be tempted to actually acquire nuclear weapons to offset this uncertainty of getting US security umbrella, which has been called into question by President Trump.
Ambassador Mohan Kumar, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsHour. Thank you, sir. Moving on to our next story, the Bureau of Labor Statistics of the United States released employment data on Friday, and according to the department's report, the U.S. economy added 151,000 jobs in February, falling short of the expectations of about 170,000 new jobs. The unemployment rate climbed, that is, slightly to 4.1% from 4.0%. This follows January's revised job gain of 125,000, which was impacted by severe weather. Still to come here on DD India NewsHour. The Kiwi pacer Matt Henry's participation in the Champions Trophy final is doubtful because of a shoulder injury. World Paralympics Grand Prix to take place in New Delhi from March 11.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Mark Lin. India and South Korea signed a technical cooperation project titled Strengthening Vocational Education and Training in Mechatronics in India. The two-year project will be implemented by KOICA, that's Korea International Cooperation Agency, in collaboration with National Council of Educational Research and Training, that's NCRT, at the RIE, or the Regional Institute of Education in Bhopal. Imagine getting quality medicines at 50 to 80% lower prices than the branded ones. The Pradhan Mantri Jan Aushadhi Kendras make this possible with 15,000 centers across India offering 2,300 types of medicines. Our health correspondent Nitendra Singh reports.
March 7th marks the Jan Aushadhi Day. Pradhan Mantri Jan Aushadhi Kendras under the scheme offer quality medicines at 50 to 80% lower prices than branded ones. With 15,000 centers nationwide, these Kendras provide 2,300 types of medicines and surgical equipment. Notable, 40% of the centers are run by women entrepreneurs. Over the last decade, people have saved around 30,000 crore rupees through this initiative. The scheme makes affordable healthcare accessible to all, especially the underprivileged, while promoting women's empowerment and entrepreneurship.
First of all, I'd like to thank our Honorable Prime Minister Modi sir for giving me this wonderful opportunity to serve people by giving them very quality medicines at very affordable prices. Many people are struggling on a day-to-day basis to buy medicines because of the high cost of pharma medicines. Our Modi ji has decreased this burden on people by giving them these generic medicines. These medicines are the same as pharma medicines with the same efficiency and the same power, but with very much lesser cost.
I thank our Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji and the government for bringing up this generic medical shops Jan Aushadhi Kendra. I am running Jan Aushadhi store here at Palladam from 2017. In this past 8 years, we are successfully able to save a lot of lives. We could improve the quality of life of many people. We could get good control of diabetes, hypertension, could treat their heart diseases in far cheaper cost without pushing them into poverty.
Medicines for heart diseases, diabetes, fever, pain and even cancer treatment are available at Pradhan Mantri Jan Aushadhi Kendras. Even sanitary napkins are available for just 1 rupee. About 12 lakh people visit Jan Aushadhi Kendras every day. Those who want to open Jan Aushadhi Kendras are helped by the government. These Kendras not only provide cheap medicines but also provide employment. India's generic medicines are famous all over the world. 1 out of every 5 people in the world consume medicines made in India. Jan Aushadhi Kendras are being opened across the country to ensure that affordable medicines reach every person in the country, especially the poor. Government has set up a target of opening 25,000 Jan Aushadhi Kendras by 2027. With inputs from Nitendra Singh, DD India.
India's President Draupadi Murmu, in her message on the eve of International Women's Day, which is observed every year on March 8, has said, and I quote, "On the occasion of International Women's Day, I extend my heartiest greetings to all sisters and daughters. International Women's Day is an occasion to honor the achievements of women power and their unique contribution to the country and society. Women are the foundation of our family, society and the nation. Women have successfully carved out their identities in diverse fields, despite facing adversities and challenges. However, a lot needs to be done to improve the socio-economic conditions of women. Let us all pledge to create a society where every woman feels safe and gets equal opportunities to move ahead. I congratulate all women achievers and wish them a bright future." Well, women empowerment has emerged as the strength of the Indian Armed Forces as well. And on the occasion of International Women's Day, we are going to be telling you about the story of an Air Force officer who in fact was the first woman to be inducted into the tri-services. Watch this report by DD India correspondent Vishal Baristow.
Indian Armed Forces are focusing a lot on women empowerment and also integration of the 3 services. I have with me Wing Commander Mrunalini. She is the first woman officer to be inducted in the tri-service. Let's talk to her and find out.
It has been an immense experience because when I was serving in the Air Force, we serve into a different culture. and when we have to go and work into the tri services now. So it's not that you're working alone, it's you're working with the Air Force and the Navy. So I've been very fortunate that I was selected for this task, as Mumbai was one of the pilot project for integration, and this project was directly under the PM, with CDS being the head for the tri services. So it was a big experience because you don't know many of the things of the other services. So when you get together, sit together, and then when you start checking that, okay, what are the things you can actually operationalize and merge, and then you come to know, oh, we have so much in common which we were not aware of, and now then we are working towards for that same goal. So it was a very big eye opener.
Now you come from a civil background, so how did you get into Air Force, and how Air Force or Defense Forces attract you?
My mom was my biggest inspiration because my mother always wanted me to become somebody who others can look up to, and she always have seen me that I should inspire the other people and the youth. So it was always a thing for me that my mom has worked very hard for me to come to this level. And when I was young, I used to see people in uniform, and I always felt that I want to step into their boots and uniform one day. And I have joined NCC. I finished my A, B, and C certificates.
Well, absolutely, sky is the limit. And as the motto of Air Force also says, touch the skies with glory. With cameraman SP Dubey in Delhi, this is Vishal Baristo for DD India.
You're watching DD India NewsHour. Time now for the sports news. And the New Zealand pacer, Matt Henry, is a doubtful starter for the Champions Trophy final against India. He has a shoulder injury. Now, Henry is racing to be fit on time for this title clash in Dubai on Sunday after injuring his right shoulder while taking a catch in the semi-final match, which was against South Africa on Wednesday. The 33-year-old is the tournament's leading wicket taker as well. He has 10 scalps. The coach, Gary Stead, says that he's hopeful that the pace bowler will recover in time for the final. In women's cricket, Maddie Green's century guided New Zealand to a commanding 78-run victory over Sri Lanka in the second ODI in Nelson. Now, after rain had played spoil sport in the first ODI, the two teams met under better conditions at Saxton Oval. Batting first, New Zealand posted a formidable total, 245 runs, with Maddie Green scoring a century of 109 balls. Hannah Robe's impressive 4-wicket haul broke the back of the Sri Lankan innings as the visitors were bundled out for just 167 runs. And with this win, New Zealand now have secured an unassailable 1-0 lead in the 3-match series with 1 game remaining. India's top para-athletes are set to lead the country's campaign at the World Para-Athletics Grand Prix. This is taking place in New Delhi from March 13 to March 11 to March 13. The 3-day event will feature over 90 competitions and witness participation from elite para-athletes representing 20 countries. Leading India's challenge will be the Paris Paralympics gold medalists Praveen Kumar, Navdeep Singh and Dharambir. The World Para-Athletics Grand Prix 2025 will feature a total of 250 para-athletes with approximately 145 Indian and 105 international competitors, making it one of the largest para-athletics events in the country. International Olympic Committee Chief Thomas Bach has said that only boxers from recognized bodies can take part in the 2028 Olympic Games in Los Angeles. Now, boxers whose national federations are not part of the global boxing body provisionally recognized by the IOC could miss out on the 2028 Games. The IOC last month had granted provisional recognition to World Boxing, which was launched in 2023 and has close to 80 members. In 2023, the IOC had stripped the International Boxing Association of recognition over its failure to implement reforms on governance and finance. As the festival of colours, Holi, draws near, Mathura district of the northern state of Uttar Pradesh is gearing up for the celebrations. The Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath inaugurated Rang Utsav in Barsana village, starting the much anticipated Holi celebrations in the spiritual city. The Holi festivities in Mathura and Barsana, they include many famous events like the Laddu Mar Holi and the Latha Mar Holi. Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India NewsHour and DD India mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS platforms. You can scan the QR code on your screen and download it now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. My name is Mark Lin. It's been a pleasure bringing you the news here from Delhi. Thank you very much for watching. Namaskar.